Commander Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the massive screen surrounding the communications center of Terra Defense Station. The red warning lights had been flashing for the past 10 minutes, and the sound coming through the speakers made his blood run cold. The voice was desperate, broken, speaking in the universal translation language that all galactic species used. "This is Colony Leader Vethera of the Zephyrian Settlement on Kepler 442b. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under massive assault. The Thrakkery Dominion has surrounded our world with over 200 warships." Morrison had seen plenty of distress calls during his 15 years of service, but something about this one felt different. The background noise told the real story: explosions, screaming, the sound of buildings collapsing under orbital fire. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez looked up from her workstation, her face pale. She had been monitoring galactic communications for 3 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. "Commander, the signal is getting weaker. I think they're losing power to their main transmitter." The transmission continued, painting a picture that made Morrison's stomach turn. They came without warning. No demands, no negotiations. Just death from the sky. Our shield generators are failing. The northern cities are already gone. We have maybe 6 hours before complete planetary bombardment begins. Morrison knew about the Zephyrians. They were one of the most peaceful species in the galaxy. Their entire civilization was built around art, music, and scientific research. They had no military, no weapons, nothing that could threaten anyone. Their only protection came from being members of the Galactic Council. "Sir," Rodriguez called out, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm getting an emergency transmission from the Galactic Council headquarters. They want to speak with Earth Command immediately." The main screen flickered to life, showing the familiar blue-skinned face of Council Leader Mordan. His usually calm expression was replaced by something Morrison had never seen before: pure panic. "Commander Morrison, we need your help," Mordan said without any of the usual formal greetings. "The Thrakkery Dominion has launched a full-scale invasion of the Zephyrian colony. This is unlike anything we've seen from them before." Morrison leaned forward in his chair. The Thrakkery were bad news, everyone in the galaxy knew that. They had been slowly taking over smaller worlds for decades, turning entire populations into slave workers for their massive industrial machine. But they usually gave warnings, made demands, followed some kind of twisted honor code. This sounded different. "What about your defense fleets?" Morrison asked. "Surely the Council has ships in that sector." Mordan's face fell even further. "Our nearest battle group is 3 weeks away at maximum speed. The Thrakkery chose their timing perfectly. Most of our military assets are dealing with the Kronos Rebellion on the other side of the galaxy." The Zephyrian transmission crackled back to life, weaker now. "Please, anyone listening, we have families here. Children. The Thrakkery are not taking prisoners. They're just destroying everything." Morrison felt something twist in his chest. He had a daughter back on Earth, about the same age as many Zephyrian younglings. The thought of them facing orbital bombardment with no way to fight back made his hands clench into fists. "Commander," Mordan continued, "Earth is the closest world with any kind of military capability. I know your species is new to the galactic community, but we're desperate. Can you help?" Rodriguez was already pulling up tactical data on her screens. "Sir, according to our files, the Thrakkery typically deploy with heavy battle cruisers and planetary assault ships. Their standard attack formation includes at least 50 capital ships." Morrison studied the information flowing across his displays. The galaxy saw Earth as a backwater world, barely advanced enough for space travel. Most alien species thought humans were just lucky to have survived on such a dangerous planet. They had no idea what that survival had cost, or what it had taught humanity about fighting. "Lieutenant, get me a secure channel to Admiral Davis on Luna Base," Morrison ordered. "Priority Alpha clearance." As Rodriguez worked to establish the connection, Morrison looked back at the tactical display showing the Kepler 442 system. It was a tiny dot of light, impossibly far away, where innocent people were dying while the galaxy's protectors sat helplessly in distant space. The communication system chimed, indicating a successful connection to Luna Command. Morrison took a deep breath, knowing that the next few minutes would change everything. "Admiral Davis, we have a situation." Admiral Robert Davis stood in the heart of Luna Base, 3 kilometers beneath the moon's surface, surrounded by walls of reinforced titanium that could survive a direct nuclear strike. The war room hummed with quiet energy as holographic displays showed real-time data from across the solar system. When Commander Morrison's urgent transmission came through, Davis knew immediately that everything was about to change. "Patch me through to the senior staff," Davis ordered, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 30 years preparing for exactly this moment. Within minutes, the room filled with Earth's most experienced military leaders. General Lisa Thompson arrived first, still wearing her combat fatigues from the morning training exercises on Mars. She had fought in the Titan mining wars and knew what it meant to battle in impossible conditions. Captain Mark Johnson came next, carrying a tablet loaded with intelligence reports that most of the galaxy didn't even know existed. Colonel David Wilson entered last, his special operations team having just returned from a classified mission in the outer asteroid belt. Davis activated the central holodeck, and a three-dimensional map of the Kepler 442 system appeared, showing the Thackeray fleet positions around the besieged Zephyrian world. The enemy ships looked like red dots of death, slowly tightening their grip around a blue marble that represented millions of innocent lives. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have our first real test," Davis began, his eyes scanning the faces of his commanders. "The Galactic Council has asked Earth for military assistance. A peaceful colony is under attack, and the Council's fleets are weeks away." Thompson leaned forward, studying the tactical display. "How many Thackeray ships are we looking at, sir?" "Intelligence suggests over 200 vessels," Johnson replied, pulling up detailed scans. "Heavy battle cruisers, planetary bombardment ships, and at least 12 dreadnoughts. Standard Thackeray invasion force." Wilson whistled low. "That's a lot of firepower. What assets do we have available?" Davis smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, he felt genuinely confident. "Kate Anderson's 6th Fleet just finished their exercises yesterday. 47 ships, fully armed, crews rested and ready." The holographic display shifted, showing what appeared to be a modest collection of human vessels, the same ships the galaxy had been watching for the past 5 years. Exploration vessels, research ships, a few defensive platforms around Earth and Mars. It looked pathetic compared to the massive fleets that other species maintained. But Davis touched another control, and the display changed completely. Suddenly, the room filled with the images of humanity's real military might. Massive shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt, where Earth had been secretly building warships for decades. Battle cruisers disguised as mining vessels. Destroyers that looked like cargo haulers. An entire fleet of dreadnoughts hidden in the shadow of Jupiter's moons. "My God," Thompson whispered. "The Council has no idea, do they?" "None whatsoever," Davis confirmed. "They think we're a primitive species that got lucky with space travel. They don't understand that surviving on Earth taught us things that no other species in the galaxy has ever learned." Johnson pulled up files on Thackeray military tactics. "Sir, their standard approach is methodical. They surround a world, make demands, then slowly increase pressure until the population surrenders. It usually takes weeks." "How long before they start killing civilians?" Davis asked. "Based on the distress signal, maybe 6 hours before they begin serious bombardment," Johnson replied grimly. Davis didn't hesitate. "Execute Operation Guardian. I want every ship in Anderson's fleet ready for immediate departure." The room erupted into controlled chaos as his commanders began issuing orders. Thompson activated her secure link to Marine Command, calling up assault troops who had trained their entire lives for exactly this kind of mission. Johnson sent coded messages to intelligence operatives throughout the solar system. Wilson began coordinating with Special Forces units scattered across the outer planets. "Sir," Thompson reported as her preparations continued, "Admiral Anderson's Marines completed zero-gravity combat training last week. They've been practicing boarding actions on simulated Thackeray vessel layouts." Davis nodded approvingly. Earth's military had been studying every species in the galaxy for years, learning their weaknesses, understanding their ship designs, preparing for the day when humanity might need to fight among the stars. "What about our hyperspace capabilities?" Davis asked. Johnson grinned. "We can push our engines 20% faster than recommended safety limits. No other species would risk it, but our crews are trained for it. And our weapons systems? Fully loaded with surprises," Wilson added. "The galaxy thinks we fight fair. They're about to learn that humans fight to win." Davis looked around at his team, these men and women who had spent years preparing for humanity's first real battle in space. The Galactic Council saw Earth as a dangerous world that had somehow produced a spacefaring civilization. They had no idea that the danger wasn't just in Earth's environment, it was in the people that environment had created. "Send a message to the Council," Davis ordered. "Tell them Earth is responding immediately. And prepare a transmission for Admiral Anderson, she launches in 4 hours." As his commanders hurried to execute their orders, Davis remained at the holodable, watching the red dots surrounding that distant blue world. The Thackeray thought they were about to conquer another helpless species. They had no idea they were about to face Deathworlders. Admiral Kate Anderson gripped the command rail of her flagship as the Thunderbolt screamed through hyperspace at speeds that no sane species would attempt. The bridge around her hummed with barely controlled energy, warning lights flickering as the ship's engines pushed beyond their designed limits. Through the main viewport, hyperspace looked like a twisted nightmare of blue and white energy, stretching and warping as they raced toward a distant world under siege. Engineering reports stress fractures developing in the hull plating, called out Lieutenant Beth Rogers from her station. "The other ships in the fleet are showing similar strain, ma'am." Anderson didn't even blink. "Tell engineering to keep pushing. We'll worry about repairs after we save lives." Her fleet of 47 warships followed in perfect formation behind the Thunderbolt, each one disguised to look like harmless civilian vessels. The massive dreadnought New Texas appeared to be nothing more than a large cargo hauler, its true weapons hidden behind false hull plating. The destroyers looked like mining ships, their missile tubes concealed behind fake or processing equipment. For 5 years, these vessels had traveled the galaxy pretending to be merchants and explorers while their crews trained for war. Commander Tom Harris looked up from his tactical display, his face grim. "Admiral, I'm receiving real-time updates from our deep space monitoring stations. The situation at Kepler 442 is getting worse." Anderson moved to stand beside him, watching as new data flowed across the screens. Satellite imagery showed Thackeray battle cruisers in perfect orbital formation, their massive guns pointed downward at the planet's surface. Bright flashes indicated ongoing bombardment, each flash representing thousands of civilian lives in danger. "They started hitting the major cities 40 minutes ago," Harris continued, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Population centers, hospitals, schools, they're not even trying to avoid civilian targets." The bridge fell silent except for the constant hum of engines and the quiet beeping of monitoring equipment. Anderson's crew had fought in the Mars Rebellion, where human colonies had battled for independence against corporate overlords. They had survived the asteroid wars, where miners had fought pitched battles in the vacuum of space. But this was different. This time, they were racing to save people they had never met, people who couldn't fight back. "Ma'am," called out Navigation Officer Danny Cruz, "at our current speed, we'll arrive at Kepler 442 in approximately 4 hours and 20 minutes. But I have to warn you, we're pushing our hyperspace drives 30% beyond safety recommendations." Anderson turned to address her entire bridge crew. "I want everyone to understand what we're doing here. The galaxy thinks humans are primitive, that we got lucky developing space travel. They see Earth as a dangerous world that somehow produced a civilization. They have no idea what that danger taught us. She walked to the main display, where a tactical overview showed their fleet's position relative to the Thrakkery invasion force. Every other species in the galaxy fights wars like it's some kind of formal dance. They announce their intentions, they follow ancient codes of conduct, they give their enemies time to surrender. Lieutenant Colonel Mike Parker, the fleet's Marine commander, stepped forward from his position near the rear of the bridge. His combat armor was already sealed and ready, his helmet tucked under one arm. "Admiral, my Marines have been studying Thrakkery ship layouts for 3 years. We know every corridor, every weak point, every place their security is lightest." Anderson nodded. The Thrakkery expect civilized warfare. They expect negotiations and formal challenges. They have no idea they're about to face humans. The ship shuddered as another power fluctuation ran through the hyperspace drive. Chief Engineer Ray Coleman's voice crackled over the communications system. "Admiral, I can hold this speed for maybe 2 more hours before we risk complete engine failure." "Then we'll arrive in 2 hours instead of 4, Anderson replied without hesitation. "Increase power to hyperspace drives. Divert everything from non-essential systems." Harris looked up from his station. "Ma'am, that includes life support reserves and emergency power." "We won't need life support reserves if we can't save those people," Anderson said firmly. "Besides, my crew knows how to hold their breath." Around the bridge, her officers smiled grimly. They understood what she meant. Humans had learned to survive in conditions that would kill most aliens within minutes. A little risk with life support systems was nothing compared to what their species had already endured. Parker moved to the tactical display, pointing at the Thrakkery fleet formation. "Admiral, once we drop out of hyperspace, my teams can be ready for boarding actions within 30 seconds. We've been practicing assault techniques that no other species would attempt." "What kind of techniques?" Anderson asked. "The kind that work," Parker replied with a cold smile. "The Thrakkery designed their ships for defense against conventional attacks. They don't expect humans who are willing to ram their vessels, cut through hull plating with portable fusion torches, or fight hand-to-hand in zero gravity." The main screen showed their estimated time of arrival counting down. 3 hours and 57 minutes. 3 hours and 56 minutes. Each second that passed meant more Zephyrian civilians dying under Thrakkery guns. "All ships, this is Admiral Anderson," she announced over the fleet communication system. "We're about to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do. The Thrakkery think they're fighting another helpless species. They have no idea they just picked a fight with Earth." The Thunderbolt continued its impossible journey through hyperspace, leading humanity's secret fleet toward their first real battle among the stars. Behind them, the rest of the galaxy watched and waited, wondering if Earth's untested military could possibly stand against the Thrakkery war machine. They were about to find out that surviving on the most dangerous world in the galaxy had taught humanity lessons that no other species could imagine. The moment Admiral Anderson's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at 0347 ship time, the entire nature of galactic warfare changed forever. The Thunderbolt and her 46 companion ships materialized directly inside the Thrakkery formation, something that every military academy in the galaxy taught was impossible. The risk of collision, the precision required, the sheer audacity, no species had ever attempted such a maneuver. Commander Tom Harris watched his tactical display light up like a Christmas tree as proximity alarms screamed throughout the bridge. "All ships report successful hyperspace exit," he called out, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "We're right where we wanted to be, in the middle of their fleet." The Thrakkery had arranged their 200 ships in the classic siege formation that had worked for centuries. Heavy battle cruisers formed the outer ring, protecting the massive planetary bombardment vessels that were systematically destroying cities below. Their command ships held the center, coordinating the attack with the methodical precision that made the Thrakkery dominion feared across the galaxy. But they had never faced humans before. "All ships, execute pattern Omega," Anderson commanded, and her fleet exploded into action like a pack of wolves attacking a herd of cattle. The new Texas, disguised as a cargo hauler until this moment, shed its false hull plating to reveal the massive weapons underneath. Captain Ryan Kelly didn't hesitate for even a second. "All power to engines," he ordered his crew. "We're going straight for their flagship." Harris watched in amazement as Kelly's dreadnought accelerated directly toward the Thackeray command vessel, a ship 3 times its size. "Captain Kelly is on collision course with their flagship," he reported. "His crew is evacuating to escape pods." What happened next had never been seen in galactic warfare. Instead of trying to avoid the collision, Kelly's ship slammed directly into the Thackeray flagship at maximum velocity. The impact tore both vessels apart, but not before Kelly's crew had fired every weapon they had at point-blank range into the enemy's bridge. "Captain Kelly reports mission successful," Harris announced with professional calm, as if ramming a dreadnought into an enemy flagship was just another day at the office. "His crew is safely away in escape pods." Around the battlefield, similar scenes played out as human ships executed maneuvers that defied every rule of civilized combat. The destroyer Phoenix spun through a formation of Thackeray cruisers, firing in all directions like a deadly spinning top. The cruiser Liberty used its magnetic grappling systems to literally drag a Thackeray vessel into the path of its own allies' weapons. But the real terror began when Lieutenant Colonel Mike Parker's Marines started their boarding actions. "Marine assault teams are away," Parker reported from the shuttle bay. "Breaching enemy hulls in 37 locations." The Thackeray had designed their ships to repel conventional boarding parties. They had security checkpoints, blast doors, and defensive positions that could hold off attacking forces for hours. But they had never planned for humans who had grown up under Earth's crushing gravity and hostile environment. Parker's Marines moved through Thackeray vessels like unstoppable forces of nature. Where alien boarding parties would try to fight their way through corridors, humans simply cut new holes in the walls with portable fusion torches. Where other species would retreat when faced with heavy resistance, human Marines pressed forward with a determination that terrified their enemies. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Jennifer Lee, her voice filled with disbelief, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Thackeray vessels. They're saying they've never seen fighting like this." Anderson studied her tactical display, watching as Thackeray ships either fled the battle or signaled their surrender. The massive invasion fleet that had seemed unstoppable just hours ago was now scattered and broken. Some vessels burned in space, others drifted powerless with their crews evacuated, and many more were limping away at maximum speed. "Admiral," Harris reported, "the planetary bombardment has completely stopped. All Thackeray ships have either surrendered or withdrawn beyond weapons range." Anderson looked at the chronometer on her command console. The entire engagement had lasted exactly 6 hours and 14 minutes. A Thackeray invasion force that should have taken weeks to defeat had been completely routed in less than a day. "Ma'am," Lee called out, "the Thackeray fleet commander is requesting formal surrender terms. He says he wants to speak with our leader." Anderson smiled grimly. "Tell him his surrender is accepted. And immediately dispatch medical teams to assist with their wounded." Her bridge crew looked surprised. After such a violent battle, showing mercy to the enemy seemed almost contradictory. "Admiral?" Harris asked quietly. Anderson turned to address her entire crew. "This is what separates us from them. We fight like demons when we have to, but we heal like angels when the fighting stops. That's what it means to be human." Within minutes, human medical teams were boarding damaged Thackeray vessels, treating wounded enemies with the same skill and care they would show their own people. The same hands that had wielded weapons with devastating efficiency now worked to save lives and ease suffering. Down on the planet's surface, Zephyrian survivors watched as the orbital bombardment simply stopped. The death that had been falling from the sky for hours was suddenly gone, replaced by human rescue ships that began landing in the devastated cities. The galaxy had just witnessed something unprecedented, a military victory so complete and so swift that it redefined what was possible in space warfare. But more importantly, they had seen what happened when a species that had learned to survive on the most dangerous world in the galaxy decided to protect someone else. The age of human military dominance had begun, and it had started with an act of mercy. Ambassador Paul Mitchell walked into the grand chamber of the Galactic Council with quiet confidence, his footsteps echoing in the vast circular room that had hosted diplomatic discussions for over 1,000 years. The emergency session had been called just 3 days after the Battle of Kepler 442, and every major species in the galaxy had sent representatives. The chamber, which normally buzzed with conversation and political maneuvering, was eerily silent. 47 different species sat in their designated sections, their alien faces all showing the same expression, complete and utter shock. The massive holographic display at the center of the chamber showed footage from the recent battle, playing and replaying the moments that had changed everything. Mitchell took his place at the human delegation podium, a small platform that had been added only 5 years ago when Earth first joined the galactic community. Back then, humanity had been seen as junior members, a primitive species that had somehow stumbled into space travel. The human section had been placed in the back corner, almost as an afterthought. Now, every eye in the chamber was focused on him. Honored delegates, Mitchell began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustic system, I am here to provide a full report on the recent liberation of the Zephyrian colony at Kepler 442. The main display shifted to show current images from the planet's surface. Where days ago there had been burning cities and devastation, now there were organized rescue operations. Human medical teams worked alongside Zephyrian survivors, setting up temporary hospitals and evacuation centers. The contrast was striking, the same species that had unleashed such devastating military power was now working tirelessly to heal and rebuild. I am pleased to report that civilian casualties were kept to an absolute minimum, Mitchell continued. Our final count shows fewer than 12,000 Zephyrian losses, despite the Thackeray bombardment lasting several hours before our arrival. A ripple of amazement went through the chamber. Previous Thackeray invasions had typically resulted in millions of civilian deaths, sometimes the complete extinction of entire species. The fact that humanity had arrived in time to prevent a genocide was almost unbelievable. Council leader Veltar, an ancient being whose species had founded the Galactic Council 800 years ago, slowly rose from his elevated platform. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he processed what he had witnessed over the past 3 days. Ambassador Mitchell, he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, we find ourselves in need of a significant reassessment. The chamber fell even quieter, if that were possible. Veltar's words carried enormous weight, his species had been the galaxy's peacekeepers for longer than most civilizations had existed. For 5 years, we believed we understood humanity's place in our community, Veltar continued, his translator converting his complex vocalizations into words everyone could understand. We knew your world was dangerous, that it had forged you into a resilient species. We thought this resilience would make you excellent survivors, perhaps good explorers and traders. He paused, looking directly at Mitchell. We were catastrophically wrong. We did not realize that your world had not just made you resilient, it had made you into the galaxy's apex warriors. The battle footage continued playing on the central display, showing human ships executing maneuvers that defied every principle of space combat. The ramming attacks, the boarding actions, the tactical decisions that should have been suicide runs but somehow worked perfectly, it all painted a picture of a military capability that no one had imagined possible. Your fleet destroyed or disabled a Thackeray invasion force in 6 hours, Veltar continued, still struggling to believe his own words. A force that should have taken our combined fleets weeks to defeat, assuming we could defeat it at all. Mitchell nodded respectfully. Honored Council leader, humanity brings a different perspective to warfare. We learned on a world where everything was trying to kill us, where survival meant adapting to threats that would destroy other species. When we fight not just to win, but to ensure that those we protect never have to face such dangers again. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Admiral Davis sat in his war room beneath Luna Base, reviewing intelligence reports that painted a remarkable picture of how quickly the galaxy was adapting to the new reality. Captain Mark Johnson stood beside him, reading from a data tablet that seemed to update itself every few minutes. "Sir, the intelligence reports are fascinating," Johnson said with barely contained amusement. "Three major aggressive empires have completely halted their expansion campaigns. The Vrex hegemony recalled all their battle fleets to defensive positions. The Korth Empire cancelled their planned invasion of the Tau Ceti system. Even the notorious Skull Raiders have gone completely silent." Davis smiled as he watched star charts that showed peaceful trade routes where before there had been constant military tensions. "What about defensive requests?" "That's even more interesting," Johnson replied, pulling up another screen. 17 different species have submitted formal requests for defense agreements with humanity. The Centauri Trade Federation wants us to establish a permanent base in their system. The Crystal Singers are offering us exclusive mining rights in exchange for protection. Even the proud Altarian Republic, who have never asked for help from anyone, quietly sent an inquiry about mutual defense treaties. The implications were staggering. In less than a week, humanity had gone from being the newest and least significant member of galactic civilization to becoming its most sought-after ally. Species that had ignored Earth for years were now competing for human attention and protection. "Sir," Johnson continued, "there's something else. Our deep space monitoring stations are picking up communications between various hostile groups. They're all talking about the same thing, avoiding any conflict with species under human protection." Davis leaned back in his chair, looking at the star maps that covered the walls of his war room. For decades, those maps had shown a galaxy divided by conflict, where peaceful species lived in constant fear of aggressive neighbors. Now, for the first time in living memory, there was a sense that the balance of power had fundamentally shifted. "You know what this means, don't you?" Davis asked quietly. Johnson nodded. "It means the galaxy has discovered that the best guardians are those forged in the crucible of a death world." Davis stood up and walked to the main display, which showed real-time positions of human fleets now being requested throughout the galaxy. Ships that had been disguised as civilian vessels were suddenly in high demand as protectors and peacekeepers. The species that everyone had underestimated had become the force that might finally bring lasting peace to the stars. "Captain, send a message to all fleet commanders," Davis ordered. "We're not conquerors. We're not empire builders. We're protectors. And we're going to make sure that what happened to the Zephyrians never happens to anyone else again." The age of human guardianship had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.